A loom is a really elegant solution with a gentle touch for creating space within historic DuPont Circle. The light circle defines a gathering space at the center of the park, and the lit archway creates a focal point, focusing you to the fountain at the center of the park. The gestures in this entry don't dramatically change the space, but they reimagine and create gathering spaces and focus to DuPont Circle. This project is a really well thought out and detailed project that offers real solutions. It plays well with the existing site and context and plugs into multiple aspects of its surroundings. It also focuses on ideals of environmentalism and community.
The jury was really impressed with this project. It addressed all of the framework for design excellence points in a very direct way. And I think we were all maybe disappointed that it wouldn't actually be built.
There are a lot of projects that design for net zero energy. It was interesting to see a project that, while conceptual, went for net positive energy. On top of which, I think the jury found it was very interesting that, this was sort of not just designed as these individual units, but more like a district of buildings that capitalized on the ability to produce solar at a much larger scale than one would on an individual home.
So this project, this unbuilt project, was really interesting because it strived to attain the 15-minute city, which essentially means that all essential needs within the city can be met by all the inhabitants through sustainability and producing food and walkability, and then that leads into issues of health and well-being. So I think there are so many issues about this project that just made it very compelling.
Oftentimes you see garages that are trying to pretend to be buildings to fit into their context. In this case, we had a garage. It was a garage, and it was rehabilitated and retrofitted to actually be functional indoor space. And from the street and from some of the other views that were captured and presented to the jury, this doesn't look like a garage anymore. And I think that's really a testament to some of the very minimal but important design moves that the design team did in order to create a more pedestrian-friendly experience at the ground level. And of course, this capping off with the occupiable green roof. All in all, to see a building in an urban context turn from something that is vehicle dominated into something that's meant for people is a really good precedent for how to deal with our future parking garages.
The assembly was a Ford assembly factory and showroom and offices, and the building has been adaptively reused into a life science facility. It has a crane bay at one end, which was probably looked at for a long time as just an unusable space, and thankfully these architects managed to save it and create just a tremendous atrium space out of it. It's light-filled and filled with activity, and as a real amenity to the building. The Winchester received a citation for responsible design because the jury was very impressed with how it addressed two of the framework for excellence elements: integration into the community, the relationship of this job training program with the women's shelter across the street. And it was a sensitive design on a very obviously limited budget. We think that the ultimate result is something that will be an amenity to the community and save a building that has served the community for a very long time.
APS Ed Center is a fantastic renovation of a 1968 building. The original building is an incredible structure in its own right, but the new renovation focused on energy efficiency and created new interior space that reimagines a characteristic of the original building, the arched facade, but creates it as an interior feature of the building by breaking up and relocating the core structure.
So the Damestown Presbyterian Church, which this project is called, it was basically a restoration and a remodeling of an existing church and an addition to the church to increase the space within the church and add auxiliary structures to it. I think the thing about this project is that the restoration of the church is impeccable, and the interiors have just been beautifully reimagined. And there was an existing classroom and fellowship building which was removed from 1967, and in place the addition of a very sympathetic structure that still relies upon the importance of the church as its focal point. So all in all, as an addition, a remodeling and a restoration job, it was very successful.
508 K Street preserves small-scale community retail in a retail district, but reimagines it as a more pedestrian-friendly development. It includes a new public courtyard space, weaving the project together. The jury thought that it was sensitive to preserve the small-scale retail while creating the public amenity of the outdoor spaces that's so integral to the project.
The Kanawa provides a great template for how buildings that have run through their full life cycle can be reused and modernized. The architects did an amazing job finding additional space to create some additional units, which I'm sure were very important to making the project financially sustainable. The jury liked the way that the sloping backyard was terraced to bring light into the lower level where new apartments were created, and we particularly liked the modest expansion of the rear units by the addition of some glass bays which were treated in a contemporary manner, which fit very nicely with the historic veranda on the back side of the building.
This building, which is Carver Hall, was built in 1942 to house African American men supporting war efforts. And it was named for George Washington Carver, a famous black scientist, inventor, and botanist. And it was also designed by a well-known black architect at the time. The amazing thing about it is not only the restoration and the care that was taken for the interior remodeling, but that it really kept a very important building on site that had a lot of cultural cachet. Modern HVAC systems were employed, and a new entry structure was put into the courtyard, which really connects the existing spaces to the new entry. So it was a very successful project and a very important project.
College View Home is a small but thoughtful preservation and renovation project of a 1951 Charles Goodman and Associates house. The project team did a remarkable job of preserving the character and materials of the original house while updating to modern standards.
This home is a great example of how a residential architect can help a family bring back the elegance of their mid-century modern home. Many of these homes over the past 70 years have become decrepit and their original design clarity lost. And this is a really great example of how the original spirit of the home has been restored.
I think of particular interest for this project, the creation of an outdoor space that allows the addition and the existing building to kind of cohesively come together and have this outdoor experience now was something that was successful.
So this was an original house built in 1951 by the architect Charles Goodman, who was known for mid-century modern homes. And I think the fact that it was restored carefully with sort of the transformation of the interiors to modern day living for homeowners was very successful. And just the fact that we can have these homes in our neighborhoods without tearing them down, keeping them relevant and appealing to the public is critically important today. So this project was a complete restoration of the exterior envelope of the Cosmos Club by the well-known architects Carrier and Hastings in 1900. The thing about this project was that it was such a careful restoration of existing materials, details, carvings, that there was no way that this jury could not recommend it for an excellence award.
The interesting thing about preservation projects is that while they seem very straightforward, we're going to make this look like it used to, you run into issues where you're going to have to come up with creative solutions. And this design team had to peel back every layer of this project, from the stucco to the limestone to the roof. And for them to find out that the facade was actually load bearing, and then come in with a more modern approach to securing the masonry back to the structure, I thought it's something that obviously typically has to be done, but in this case, the intervention is completely invisible.
There are many shades of preservation, from adaptive reuse to preservation like this project exemplifies. The jury was particularly impressed with the highly technical and rational approach to the restoration of the building, and I think we all really wanted to highlight how important this work is.
The Cosmos Club represents a textbook study of a exterior envelope restoration, and this will certainly be a future case study project. The diligence and care taken by their project team is outstanding, but also outstanding is the use of the latest preservation technology to achieve a spectacular outcome. A college stadium like Jones Hill House could easily have been demolished and redeveloped, leaving a mountain of waste. Instead, the elegant structural gesture of the barrel vault roof was expanded upon in a beautiful addition that is compatible with the existing structure. The glass wall transforms the interior space of the stadium.
It was particularly fascinating to note the change in program. Essentially, there's much more program in a modestly enlarged Hill House than there was previously, and the sort of inward focus of the spectators watching the sports has been transformed into an outward-looking view from inside the building of just the team practicing on a regulation-size field.
There's something very unique about this project, because the Jones Hill House was sited so closely to the football stadium. When it was revealed, that the end of this could be glazed, the view connecting this great Division I program from basketball to football is sort of that doesn't happen. There aren't a lot of other case studies you could look at where there's this connectivity, both visual and the site context. And taking advantage of that seems like a simple thing, but the way that it was executed was pretty flawless.
So I think it's not only the stadium and reimagining it to encompass a whole campus and bring people together. It wasn't just that, but it was also the addition that was made to the stadium and the beauty of the glass curtain walls and the masonry and the connection to circulation and outside activities. It just made it wildly appealing, and it's an enormous structure, which is incredibly compelling in and of itself.
So the jury felt that the vapor house materiality was really special and interesting, and the kind of juxtaposition of this stainless steel material with the kind of this bubbly warbled finish was really interesting, and played well off of the larger glazed areas of the project that looked out onto these beautiful kind of extended landscapes.
The jury felt that this project was a very modest and edited composition with a really nice material palette. Great connection between the interior and the exterior that made some really sophisticated and understated spaces. A beautiful home that will be enjoyed for generations.
So this house called Spring Mill House had a very interesting floor plan where actually the elements were extruded along a central spine, and the articulation of them as these sort of box-like structures connecting to each other and connecting to the environment as well made for a fairly cohesive whole. So the jury thought that this house exemplified the diagram, which is basically a circle on top of a plinth. And the bottom of the house was the structure which with this little pavilion sits upon was restored and transformed with its glass. And the top piece of the house, which acts as a pavilion and connects the main stair through it, just really was an interesting way to add on to what is an existing structure.
The Rambler Redux represents a very common challenge for residential architects, where we have a mid-century home that's somewhat dated and needs to be transformed for modern lifestyles. And this home does it in a very elegant way, retaining most of the original structure, but transforming it to more contemporary tastes and using very restrained materials that still fit into the context.
Black Oak Farm is an elegant solution to the challenge presented by this project. The building is very sensitively sited within the context of the existing farm. While the materials and the detailing is modern, the new barn fits into the context of the existing historic home. The use of space is very interesting with horses on the bottom and the guest house above.
The use of heavy timber, a traditional way of building these structures, gives it a character that's both historic and very comfortable inside. And its integration into the site with an earthen ramp that leads to the upper level, and taking advantage of the slope of the hill so that you have a walkout lower level is really nice.
Black Oak Farm was really interesting because it's a nice complement in the sense that the barn itself as a complement to the other structures on the site is very tasteful. At the same time, inside the barn, this idea of having the space be unencumbered by mechanical equipment by choosing the radiant floor system to heat the space, that was a really interesting design solution, and we really appreciated that.
I think the transformation of historic barn structure to this building is done in a really elegant way, keeping some of the same elements, barn elements, but utilizing this juxtaposition of materials and in terms of the way the roof and light is brought in from above, and the fact that the horses are below and the space above it, which was a hayloft originally, is now a big space for the owners to use. So it's both for people and for horses. We felt that this house, in terms of its elegant detailing, massing, use of materials, siting with the pool and the natural wood and the masonry, was a very interesting solution to this new structure on the site and its connectivity to the landscape.
I think just a few things that the jury also found interesting that kind of buttressed our opinion that this project was worthy of an award was that it also had some sustainability components that were a part of it. Having the envelope be a priority with the foam insulation and rain harvesting roofs are an important feature of the project. As well, I think the material palette that was selected with elements like the copper that could change over time are really going to make this building something that's beautiful and appreciated for years to come.
The home has a very interesting geometric composition, rustic stone walls run in one direction, and then receding planes of wood and glass step in and form spaces and open spaces underneath overhangs, which are really fascinating. You can sort of imagine an initial cube that's been deconstructed as planes are pushed in, and the resulting composition is just tremendously fascinating, especially on the backside of the home, which is so transparent.
This project had really interesting interlocking spaces on the ground floor where the inhabited space wrapped around the exterior space. There's also this interwoven component of the materials with the very massive stone buttressing the much lighter materials of glass and wood. This project represents a really successful addition that provides an elegant solution to parking and an entrance to an existing house. The new carport sets up a really interesting entrance sequence that can also be used as an arrival courtyard. The new interior moss garden is a beautiful lush space that becomes an element that all spaces of the house look into.
This was really a fascinating project. It took an under-designed portion of an existing site and transformed it. And in fact, it has very little program. Most of what it does is form exterior space. All in all, it was a really intriguing project.
I think the jury found that this project was really beautiful. It's stunning, actually, that it's a garage. And from that perspective, the sustainability character of it, I thought was really important. That there was an effort to manage stormwater and keep that on site, as well as have 3 electric car charging stations within the garage and have it be more future focused for transportation.
The thing about this project is that you could take a simple addition of carport and garage and you could transform the entire entry sequence of a house and link it back to landscape, which didn't exist before. That was really amazing, and the fact that the materiality of the addition, coupled with some of the rearranging of the existing rooms, suddenly gives you space that you never thought you had.
We awarded a merit to the materials testing lab because this building is incredibly respectful of the site and the existing building that it is built around and added to. What we appreciated from this building is how reticent it is in terms of its material choice, how it tried to blend in with the existing historic brick scheme and add these moments of glazing and light for peeks into the infrastructure elements within the building itself, but then also kind of create a lighthouse element from far away and in the evening hours.
The reason the jury loved the Sister Cities Play Pavilion is because it brings a little bit of exploration and play to the center of an urban area. It's just a fun little park. You get an aspect of adventure play and an ecological exploration that is sometimes new. It's a great item to stumble upon, and we think this is just a fun little project. The adaptive reuse of Gilmore Hall does a fantastic job of updating the visual and physical connectiveness between the program, its occupants, and while preserving the legacy of working on a mid-century rooted project. It's no small feat to encapsulate a brand new set of infrastructure and program into a mid-century building, but it's done so gracefully and respectfully.
The Johns Hopkins University Applied Physics Laboratory impressed us with the beautiful, succinct architecture, the detail of the small spaces in a huge building, and the way the juxtaposition of the two masses with the atrium space between. We also like the mirrored quality of the chrome columns as you enter, and the reflectiveness of that, and kind of reflecting on the experience of the entry. It's truly a wow space, and from the big experience and entry and experience of the atrium to the small details and introverted spaces of rest and reflection. High quality project, high quality materials, and very thoughtful design.
The addition for Van Ness Elementary School really practiced restraint both in the architectural moves that it made and then the material selections for the building. The addition frames and wraps a new outdoor space and then draws attention to the restored field house that are all part of this campus. And it really, those moves make it feel like an incredible campus, academic campus environment. The material choices and the use of both perforated and opaque materials start to create a layered elements of space as you go from the expanded classrooms all the way up to this beautiful roof deck and outdoor education space that overlooks the common area that's created at the new center of the complex.
This project stood out for us immediately in terms of the massing materials and the craftsmanship on that exterior, the proportions and the way it was so finely considered. Also, the criteria of energy and water use was outstanding. A very aggressive energy reduction of 30% and water reduction of 25% just really stood out. Not all the entries had energy and water information, but this project did an exceptional job.
Right. For the Montessori School edition, the interior spaces and material choices started to really reflect that teaching methodology and bring little tactile examples of learning into the everyday space as well as more refined into the classroom space.
One of the elements that impressed us was the variety of framed views from the interior to the exterior, and how at many different scales and many different locations there was a connection to nature, reinforced by the placement and the orientation on the site.
One of the first things that we noticed about this Montessori school was that its placement on site really incorporated well into the neighborhood and its surroundings. It's a very large school, it has a large program, but it doesn't feel large or overwhelming. It integrates well, it feels approachable. What the jury first noticed about John Eaton Elementary was its real respectful connectedness to the historical buildings on site already existing. It is inserted onto this site at an appropriate scale, lightly touching the historical components while still making a pretty sharp contrast in its technical and building elements. It fits really well on site and creates a really nice entry area for dropping students off, approaching the building while remaining respectful to its historical environment.
One of the things we appreciated about the design of the exterior was the multiple different levels of possible play and interaction, and how the design for the ecosystem and the resources of the site were integrated into the different level changes and helped. Not only were they, the box wasn't just checked, but they were integrated into how the design was fulfilled.
The interior of this project wasn't boring. We appreciated how it used bold use of color throughout the space to also serve as both a design element and a wayfinding element as you move through both new addition and existing portions of the building. The touches of weaving in components of language, culture, art, and history within that scheme worked incredibly well, and we thought it created a wonderful interior environment for an academic space.
This submittal got the gold star for its accuracy and its ability to communicate very clearly on each of the topics that the project was judged upon. So the jury had a very clear idea of how the project used integration and equitable communities, design for energy and water reduction, the ecosystems and the economy for decisions based on design, design for well-being, the resources, design for change and discovery. Every one of those categories had a slide and clearly discussed the project or diagrammed how those impacted. And while it's a beautifully designed project, it also communicated really well. So, exceptional job.
What the jury really appreciated about this project was the move to rethink what a headquarters can be and how that could open up an opaque building to a broader community in terms of both program and the integration of natural elements throughout the interior. This space just seems like a really wonderful environment to be in, to take a call, to have a meeting, and then to understand more about the mission of the Marriott mission and its history, and that becomes in turn, both public outreach, public awareness, and overall a better use and a new use, an example of how space can be considered within office environments. This project really, for the jury, we were incredibly impressed how it stuck to this mission of using space and color and narrative and story to improve maternal health for women of color in DC. We were appreciative of moves within the space to create both branded and bright environments, not only for pregnant women, but also then for families to gather and to be, as well as for expectant mothers to be able to walk and have their birthing experience crafted in the way that they want for themselves. This space spoke to the jury overall as something that's incredibly unique. We had not seen it before. We want one for all of our communities, and we really congratulate the design team and the overall development team for making it a reality. What the jury appreciated about this project was the fact that it transformed a building off an alley, which we all knew was not the best looking building to start with, and took the simple move of using this pleated wood ceiling-scape to create both wayfinding, dividing, unique entry, office and workout space in the back, and really transform this little brick box of a building into a special and truly branded moment for the organization. We also appreciated the integration of skylights throughout, and just overall the restrained moves that were made also disguise very well, very cleverly, probably the limited budget that the project had. So congratulations.
The jury was so impressed and excited about this project. We're all jealous. We want to work in the space. In particular, the way of restraint in terms of the design, and then every surface is being used either for branding or for interaction or pin-up space or design. It's obvious that there's a culture of creativity in this office. And my favorite space was the community center area that at some point is the dressy conference room to bring in the large group of clients, and then it can be easily modified to become a lecture space or other the hangout space, the Beer Friday space. You know, it looked like all of the spaces could be used for those kind of gathering and casual interactions, and it just spoke to creativity and inspiration for me.
This space and this building had such an amazing story, and to see that transformation from parking garage to office to then, you know, really beautiful new office spaces is incredible overall. What we appreciated is that the design team highlighted that structure and didn't shy away from the kind of like the robust concrete nature of the building and let it shine through in various components as the space was fitted out.
One aspect that we were particularly impressed with was the reuse and waste reduction strategy. By reusing the millwork and furniture, it's not at all readily apparent in the final design, which only speaks to the successful implementation.
In addition to creating a beautiful space in which to work, this project also does a fantastic job at really encapsulating sustainability and using it as a fantastic baseline for the rest of the architectural practice. From LEED, well building, fit well, living building challenge. You guys have your hands in all the different components, which is fantastic as learning opportunity as well. Energy reduction, water reduction, you're encapsulating all of that into your practice, and we think it's a great opportunity to showcase to your clients the success of projects like this, which should hopefully benefit our profession as we continue.
The Sonia affordable housing project was exceptional in the way it treated the artfulness and respect of the inhabitants. It really is an exciting, exuberant environment. The specifics of the interior and how it wrapped into the exterior and the color denoting, it feels exuberant, both on the exterior and the interior. And so we awarded it a citation.
So for the Spring Flats campus project, what really struck us was the rose, which we really felt was the kind of piece that knit the whole site together, both giving it historic context in a modern way, as well as providing this visual contrast between the other two larger scale buildings, really giving a focus. So what struck us about the Aldea on H Street was the plan layout and how each of the individual bedrooms had their own in-suite restroom, bathroom, and that you could really have roommates without necessarily having roommates. The shared common space seemed large enough to allow you to be an individual within your own unit, and that also each individual bedroom had access to a private exterior balcony or other outdoor space.
This application was exceptional in terms of all of the points were covered and accentuated. The indoor qualities of the space were simple and restrained, but warm and welcoming, and reflected the use of the space. So the lobby photo in particular, with the rhythm and the pattern of entry, really astounded us. And then when you walk into the performance hall, and how beautiful, warm, inviting, the attention to the acoustics, the sectional quality of the space, all of that came together in such a thoughtful and impactful way.
The jury was impressed with how the design team was able to situate the building in a way that acknowledged this active street frontage and bury that black box of an auditorium space deeper into the building so we can have an active facade. That facade is also highlighted and really rendered very beautifully in this pleated facade structure that tries to bring this kind of Borromini marble-esque flow into that exterior of the building, and helps guide people into that entry space and into this experience that we could watch as people walk up the steps on that exterior as they explore the interior of the building.
So one of the aspects that struck us about the interplay between the grand foyer and the audience chamber is, looking at it in section, the angle of the ceiling reverses from one to the other, mimicking the experience of being on stage when you're in the foyer. In addition, the play of the light from the sawtooth ceiling as it kind of travels down the slatted wall and intersects with the railing out in the foyer creates a lot of different shadows.
In addition to the really well executed exteriors and interiors of the building, we really appreciated that this whole project creates an entire separate ecological environment on the rooftop of the building, both for public and public use and use of the building, the components of sustainability, the water retention, the collection of different plants and species, creates to the overall sustainability of the project, but it also has a beautiful amphitheater. You're able to take the program that is nestled within the building, bring it up onto the rooftop, and now all of a sudden the programmatic elements of this entire project are almost doubled in size and scale.